Previously on Handbook for Mortals. We could not have gotten this far without you, my little starlet. You have elevated us all. We are not worthy of your grace.
I love you, Charles.
Why am I here? Let the thought perish. The curtain rises on the hyped premiere. Despite how upset Sherry is, the show proceeds smoothly. However, the narrative doesn't give two craps about that, so we jump straight to our grand finale. Charles steps out, and instead of saying anything eloquent or whatever to set the mood, he essentially says, "Hush, mortals, this is the hardest illusion that's ever existed ever, and our star's performing it for the very first time." Granted, he does apparently deliver some grandiose accompanying speech, co-written by Sherry, obviously, but we're not privy to anything other than, check out our radiant star do the difficult things so good, y'all. At least 7 full-size desktop Kindle app pages are spent describing this illusion and commentary in painfully meticulous detail, from preparation to completion. It puts all the other overspeak of the weeks to shame and bloats this chapter enough to easily become a two-parter. However, this is a visual medium. I can trim the fat, baby. Amid Sherry's conjuring, she periodically exposits on chaos magic. The first time she mentions it, Sherry says that she hasn't quite mastered it yet. So, that's a good sign. It's also dangerous, strong and volatile, very unpredictable, and it can all go to HE double hockey sticks real quick if the caster goofs it up. Golly gee, Beeve, that sounds mighty risky. Thank goodness your main love interest didn't just have a total meltdown that would have otherwise thrown off your concentration. Numbnuts is already getting distracted and has to push aside thoughts of telling Mac who Charles really is to her. Wait, so Sherry really is concealing something from us? She's been quite forthcoming thus far. Why withhold this? For dramatic effect? For now, let's put a pin in this. Got a good hunch we'll come back to it later. Charles tells the audience that the illusion is called creation, ... because that is what we are doing. Masterful wordsmithery there, Charles. Alright, just so I got this right. Sherry harnesses a form of magic that she hadn't quite yet mastered and is very unpredictable in order to play God for the entranced masses, and that's not going to get unpacked by the narrative whatsoever, is it? Sherry reiterates how dangerous this all is, how lots of things could go very wrong, and even she really didn't know just how wrong they could go, comparing the sheer act of pulling off his illusion as trying to catch lightning in a bottle. It sounds great, until you're the one who has to hold the bottle. Good God, this sounds like an avalanche of lawsuits waiting to happen. Why go this far? The way Sherry goes on about how dangerous this act is, despite being reassured in the previous chapter that she has rehearsed it enough times to do it blindfolded, she doesn't instill a whole lot of confidence here. Maybe this was the thing that got Zeb's panties all wadded up in chapter 12? I certainly don't blame him if that's the case. As the illusion continues on, I think Sherry dissolves her physical form into the ether. She then feels physical pain from conjuring a fully formed human being that bears a striking resemblance to the other man on stage, and oh boy, put a chunky pin on that. During all this, she deems it imperative to deliver her own commentary on aspects of the illusion. For instance, she expresses distaste for the glass sculpture based on her image. That was totally Charles's idea, but she thought it was weird and creepy. Then she takes credit for her idea of the apple tree when its appearance makes the audience go, ooh. She also mentions that the wardrobe she conjures looks like the one described in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which has always been one of her most favorite books, and she had added that touch as an homage to that story. Through the pain, she manages to commentate to us that this is why Charles wanted a glass sculpture of me. He loved the idea of a glass sculpture of me going into the chest, and the living Sherry, or, me, comes out. Girl, shut up! I am trying to immerse myself in your funky little Book of Snow White Genesis crossover fanfic over here. Shouldn't she be extra focused right now? Girlie endures the pain of shattering her corporeal form all to catch chaotic lightning in a bottle for entertainment, yet she has it in her for idle banter. Still, she presses on, existing in some dangerous limbo state, determined not to succumb to temptation of falling apart, thereby putting us out of our misery. Her head throbs by the time she reappears. The act finally comes to a close. Surprisingly, Cam didn't seem to botch anything, so congrats on that red herring serum. Charles returns on stage to take his bow. But Sherry, I guess, reforms herself backstage and struggles to stand. She wobbles and collapses into the arms of the nearest person, which is Zeb to Sherry's chagrin. Girl feels like she had swallowed gasoline and then lit a match inside her throat after her struggle to harness the mystical wonders from the Chaos Lords themselves for the ogling mortal masses. And again, she still has it in her to be cheeky. I mean, she is someone who is compelled to get her last quip in a situation. If anything, I admire her commitment to the bit a little. Zeb mutters some unintelligible non-English mumbo-jumbo into Sherry's ear, and then asks what's happening to her. Tad enters the chat, calm and composed, which warrants the highest of praise from Sherry. In contrast, Riley fumbles in a panic before calling 911. Charles appears backstage, also in a tizzy over what to do. Then, Sherry mutters out, "'Tis but a scratch. Before passing out. Nah, I'm just joking. She actually says, "Call my mother. Bleh." One double space later, the chapter still follows Sherry's point of view, but it seems we've jumped to some unspecified future where she's fine. Just needed some time to sleep that fainting spell off. To find out what has happened between collapsing and waking up again at God knows where, she pulls memories from multiple witnesses, as a single person cannot see everything. These memories are revealed to Sherry through that person's vision. How many people did she draw from and who are they? Apparently several, and we don't know. I think I understand the method behind the madness, to maintain a chronological flow with Sherry's color commentary and, theoretically, not break whatever tension may come. But I don't like it. This may work better in a visual format, but it doesn't translate here. There is no establishment on where she is now. This seems like the same narrating voiceover as before. Considering the book has been mostly told in the first person past tense, this section would need to be in the past perfect. And spoiler alert, it's not. This confused me at first read because it seemed like her spirit was floating in some cosmic void akin to how I interpreted parts of her finale, where her memory sifting was more or less done in real time. This confusion lasted way longer than I cared to admit. If Sarum wanted to depict this time frame in memory sifting hindsight, then jump to Sherry actively waking up, notice the people around her looking haggardly relieved, assess her surroundings in confusion, then transition to the memory sifting. There would at least be more clarity in the situation, despite maybe diffusing the tension a little bit, but sacrifices, I guess. However, an easier solution would be to make this a part an italics vision segment. We could step out of Sherry's head into third person since there's precedent for that. Of course, having God knows how many pages in italics is nonsense, so we would need to delete the literal italics vision concept from the book entirely. Otherwise, we'd still be able to maintain the chronological order, and when Sherry wakes up, we'd only need a few sentences akin to, I sifted through so-and-so's memories to catch up on what I missed. Insert culmination of opinions here. Anyway, Mac finally rolls up with his Starbucks to assess the situation. Yeah, Mr. Ultra Professional actually left the theater during the show. Dude needed to brood with his sickie. Mac asks what happened, but no one really knows. Sherry had appeared and collapsed into Zeb's arms. Paramedics arrive and also ask what happened. In case you forgot, no one really knows. Sherry had appeared and collapsed into Zeb's arms. The paramedics hoist Sherry away. Mac says he'll drive over to the hospital, and Charles invites himself to tag along. Before they take off, Tad decides to relay Sherry's last message to Mac. Not sure if it was important, but she mumbled to call her mom. Thought you should know. Mac's like, "'Kay, I'll get right on that later." And then he doesn't. In one ear, out the other. Who knows where HR stuffed her emergency contact form anyway? Instead, we gotta have Tad drag a traumatized Riley away from the blood pit, while Mac drives Charles to the hospital in an uncomfortable silence. Another double space later, our ethereal heroine continues to sift through memories. Reading through this whole part of the chapter is messy, cause it's even more apparent that this book was made for the screen and not a novel. Not to mention, it's obnoxious to read about Sherry routinely acknowledging the concern everyone has and how much that pains her. It was hard for me to see the people I love in pain over me. Charles assumed Mac's cold demeanor is due to him being upset about me. The tension between them is from the immense pain they felt for me. Once is sympathetic. 3 times and less than 2 pages is narcissistic. Like, damn girl, be humble. Mac and Charles sit impatiently in the intensive care waiting area. After a while, a doctor steps out. By his white coat, you could tell he was a doctor, and obviously well experienced. I mean, I should hope so. Most likely the head doctor at the hospital. Whoa, head of the hospital, eh? Must be a slow day for them. Nothing less than top men for a very special gal. Next, you're gonna tell me that this stay is covered by their non-deductible magician insurance policy and no prior authorization would have to be filed to cover the stay or prove its medical necessity. Sure hope they're in network. I don't know, man. All this is really stretching my suspension of disbelief. I'm gonna need a little more realism in my magical magician urban fantasy, please. So, the doctor introduces himself as Dr. Schmidt, cause Scholl was taken and Smith was deemed too on the nose. He asks if either of the two are family. Max stutters out that he is Sherry's friend, ... I'm her boy. I'm her ... boy ... friend ... Oh, good job there, buddy, you did it. It took the object of his affection to be in a near-death state, but Mac finally left the comforts of his static fart cloud. That looks like such a struggle to say aloud. Yet Dipstick thought he could claim to be engaged or even married to her. However, this doesn't cut it for old Doc Schmitty here. Charles reluctantly speaks up and says he's Sherry's employer. Not good enough. Dr. Schmidt needs family, damn it. He then tries to pull the doctor aside, but Mac's not having it. So Charles sighs in resignation. I am also her ... I'm her father. Mac doesn't believe it, and Charles repeats it slowly and purposely. Sherry is my daughter. Oh yeah, I've been waiting for this bad boy, so let's pause for a sec. At First, I didn't consider this a possibility because, as I said in chapter 10, the very idea of Sherry's father didn't exist in the text till that point, so it had no real estate in my mind. But, turns out I'm an unobservant dummy-wummy. See, back in chapter 1, Sherry actually does mention her father's existence in the most offhanded, yet blatantly foreshadowing way, squeezed right in between Sophia and Charles's introduction. Ugh, I can't believe I missed this. I was blinded by my shallow thirst. Oh, this is so embarrassing. I'll admit, I knew the manner of this revelation, I just didn't know how it would be delivered. And, wow, can't say I expected it to be presented with such obtuse condescension. How anticlimactic. I was hoping for something along the lines of a Telemundo version of the Darth Vader daddy reveal, loss of someone's limb included, cause why not? If there's one thing this book could use, it'd be a liberal dose of extra. Mac protests about the near kiss, and Charles is like, what? The doctor sees the awkwardness before him and pieces out, muttering, this sounds like it could turn into a Jerry Springer episode at any moment. If only, Mr. Dr. Head of Hospital. If only. And oh my god, Serum, your references only continue to date the both of us. Please, stop. I feel old enough as it is. Mac asks if Sherry knows. Yes, Charles says, nodding and in a flat tone. Why do you think she came to our show? Accuse me? What? Mac then asks why it's such a big secret. Charles responds, I cannot explain most of it to you, but I can say that, well, it was her mother's wish, and I had no choice but to respect it. Wish is a polite way of putting it, honestly. It was only recently that Sherry found out that I was her father, and that's when she came to work with us. All right, no. Longer pause now. This is the hill I am perching my future corpse on. You mean to tell me she knew this the entire time? To return to the questions I posed in the first pin, why was this the one thing kept from us? What was the point? The reveal is the antithesis of dramatic. Also, this just presents a whole battalion's worth of criticisms. I'll give the benefit of doubt and assume the hows of the secrecy will be explained in future chapters. But the whys are a different story. To start, why wasn't any of this alluded to in the prologue? The very beginning insinuates that Sherry runs off to make it on her own, to forge her own independent path with no one else in mind. But it turns out this reasoning gives Sherry and Della's argument in the prologue a whole new context. To recap that, Della practically sneers at Sherry's decision to go audition for that show, while Sherry's infuriated that her mother forcibly kept her restrained to her hometown for a few decades for some vague reason that was for Sherry's sake. But she snaps back at Della in such an over-exaggerated way. Some choice highlights. For the record, I can't believe you would stoop to anything so low. My anger erupted. If she hadn't been my mother, I probably would have punched her. I have my own life, and I think you were really selfish for what you did. This is all kept so deliberately ambiguous, it makes a surprise new context feel out of left field. There's nothing more than a singular dot dropped in the following chapter for one sentence and is never alluded to again. So I hope you caught that little nugget and securely stored it in your memory as you trudge through the rest of this swamp pit of a book. This cheap deception is built off a foundation made of balsa wood. From there, Serum chooses to build its walls from a series of misunderstandings by omission rather than attempt to craft anything of substance. The elusive Chapter 2 office meeting I won't shut up about, the bonding time from Chapter 11 that we leapfrog over, and their secret rehearsal sessions only mentioned in Chapter 14. All missed opportunities. But then the challenge there would be making Sherry a convincing, unreliable narrator. And we've seen that Serum is incapable of that, so the misunderstanding via omission route is her only semi-viable option. Even then, the misunderstanding is first presented in an awkward daddy-dom context that's reinforced with those chin tilts. A choice of fake-out that I find to be bizarre. Yes, Charles is said to be a philanderer, but why draw this parallel between the girl who calls him dad and the one who calls him daddy? Which leads me to the climactic Freudian moments that brick the reader, mostly i.e. me, clear across the face. The fake-out love confession with the almost kiss that was presented to actually look sensual with its intentional use of caressing. And then there's the fake actual kiss. Yeah, don't think I forgot about that pin. Sherry and Charles consciously decided to conjure a boy who looked just like what Charles had looks like when he was a teenager. That same boy who kisses Sherry awake from her brief slumber. Remember, this was something they worked on for weeks. So how did they go about developing these details? Whose idea was it to make Prince Adam look like Dad who will kiss Snow Eve awake? Did Sherry conjure or mark out little fake dummy versions of her one-on-one rehearsals with Charles? You can see that while the text itself is a neon-lit klaxon blaring in an otherwise silent night, the subtextual electrocomplex runs deep here. Is this all because Serum has to double down on the restraints of her own plot element, i.e. the effects of Sherry's magic pheromone aura? Okay, fine, sure. I might be overthinking it at this point, but even then, that doesn't account for Sherry's complicity. Recall in chapter 12, during Sophia's confrontation, where she pressed Sherry on how she had paid her dues to earn her spot, and then Sherry evaded the topic completely. Well, now we know the answer she couldn't admit to Sophia, to us, or to herself. Nepotism! Oh, Lord. At least Sophia got to joke about her special topping position to Sherry's face. That is one last word Sherry will never have. Right, anyway, this book is Swiss cheese and Mac believes that the girl he's in love with had tongued her own dad. Charles clears up the misunderstanding once and for all. If you would have spied on us just a moment longer, you would have seen her kiss me on the cheek. I am sorry you misunderstood, and that it caused you pain. Charles's explanation was short, to the point, and polite. Oh, womp, womp, womp. Polite my ass. Now I know where Sherry gets her condescension from. Mac feels bad, man, and mentions how he passed the automation board duty onto Cam. Charles is like, oh, damn, I think I know what's up to Sherry then. ... Before we get that answer, Dr. Schmidt peeks his head out to see if the chairs have been flung around the room while he was away. Mac and Charles turn toward him, but the scene cuts off before anything is said. Another double space, and Sherry alerts us that mysterious Lamborghini girl has pulled up to the hospital. Hell yeah! Second best girl has arrived to finish the job. If only. She enters, imperceivable to mortals, and strolls between the three men in the empty waiting area, even making the conscious point to nudge Mac aside so her presence leaves a mark to be seen by memory sifting Sherry, who assures us multiple times that she totally picked up on Mystery Girl's intent, to remind Sherry, and by extension us, that she still exists. However, when Mac turns around after our girl has bodied through him, she's already gone. Ooh! So, Mac immediately turns back to Dr. Schmidt. The other two men don't even acknowledge Mystery Girl's existence whatsoever. I get that they're not meant to, as her appearance was a message to Sherry alone. It's just more of a silly speed bump to read. This moment disrupts whatever flow had been present. It could have been cut and nothing would have been lost, except my all too brief spike of joy. Slay, Queen. The doctor says Sherry's stable, but they don't know what's wrong. I never thought I would say this, but I am currently wishing Dr. House was a real person. It's definitely the kind of case he would solve. Excuse me, where did you say you went to med school? May I please see some fictional diplomas, sir? I don't even think this case would interest House in the slightest. We then go on to spend 3 paragraphs explaining the American television show House MD and the relevance of the comparison to Charles, while also having the narrator dunk on him for being too rich and famous for pop culture from the mid to late aughts. Yes, bully him more. Dr. Schmidt takes Mac and Cheese to see Sherry. As the latter caresses his daughter's cheek, his phone rings. Now, the book states that Charles takes the call out in the hall, like a proper person, but I forgot that, and drew him talking on the phone in the room like a rude ass. This is my error that we're all gonna have to live with, because I am not redrawing any of this. The video has been a thorn in my mentally low ass for long enough as is. But don't worry, it's alright, I'm medicated now. Anyway, it's Stella on the line, and she orders Charles to ship Sherry to her ASAP, along with Mac for some reason. Her dialogue is also in italics when I don't think it should be. It implies to me she's speaking to him telepathically, not via phone. Charles tries to protest moving Sherry, but ritual altars, tools, and sacrificial goats don't travel well, so they all gotta go to Della. I want to also comment how out of place it is that Sherry refers to her mom by name here, which she has never done before, even though we are still very much following her first-person point of view. So I guess it's safe to assume Sherry woke up in Tennessee and her mom is one of the people she's memory sifting? Even then, Sherry assumes Della has a lit candle and her cards laid out? Do you see how I was previously confused? Sherry pauses everything to give us a beefy lecture on card reading and free will and destiny again. Destiny's turning out to be a wily mistress, I'll tell you what. We will never know what thoughts flit through such an enigmatic mind. Charles gives in and says he'll be there with Sherry by tomorrow via his private jet. A few pages are spent on Charles convincing Dr. Schmidt to discharge Sherry. They agree to sign release forms so the hospital won't be liable. Of course, the only time the book cares about the logistics of legal consequences, it's when Sherry's butt is on the line. If only the show troupe cared about liabilities too. Charles relays the change in plans to Mac, who already insists on tagging along, to which another beefy paragraph is spent on Charles patting himself on the back for his skillful manipulation. Yeah, dude, really had to pull out the big guns to convince Mac to accompany you. All according to plan. End of chapter. Before I give this chapter's closing thoughts, I'd like to thank y'all for watching and waiting for so long. This chapter in particular has been such an intimidating wall to climb because of how meaty it is. Hopefully, there won't be any more like this going forward. If you liked the video though, maybe you'd like to consider signing up for my Patreon. I charge only per update video, and Lord knows I only put out a handful of those per year. Ugh. But over there, I'm covering A Court of Thorns and Roses, an exclusive until completed series. Look at all these videos you're missing out on, depending on when you're watching this at least. But like I said, these videos will be publicly rolled out eventually, so there's really no pressure. I'd appreciate a like and subscribe on this video all the same, so thank you. Anyway, about that long-awaited illusion? It was okay. The grander scale conjuring with the clouds, lightning, sandstorm, tree growth, and later combustion were along the lines of something I expect from a legit Magus that's there to show off. But then you have these smaller scale speed bumps that take away from the grandiosity. Like the clunky repetition of Sherry and her crystal statue alternatingly disappearing, reappearing, disappearing again, then confirming that the conjured apples are real all 4 times, and then the young Charles doppelganger taking the time to chop down a whole ass tree and then strum on some randomly conjured guitar to accompany Sophia's tacked on background singing, and then sticking the crystalline Sherry statue back into the wardrobe. I feel like this could have been workshopped longer to get a more evenly paced flow. Some darlings definitely needed to be killed here. Jumping to the end, I'm also actively choosing to not connect any possible Electra complex dots to Serum. Considering how much of herself she has already inserted into her work, the line where she ends and Sherry begins can and has gotten hazy. I have to draw a line with my tinfoil hat armchair psychology speculation, and this is it. I got no business venturing down this rabbit hole. It certainly ain't my business. I'd like to keep my daddy doms intentional and either in a mutually consensual sandbox or a wildly toxic and up one. Thank you very much. In conclusion, play Expedition 33. Bye!
Bonjour, mes amis.